we do a lot of skincare. We do a lot of like resurfacings and anti-aging. So it just makes sense. But I wasn't going to go with it at first. Everyone thought it was funny, which I thought then was memorable.
Yeah.
And apparently it is. So
Yeah, it's funny because like that's what I remember. And I was trying to remember your other motto when in there, and I every time it come up, I kept thinking like, oh, fix your face, but then oh no, it's not that, like something else.
no, it is now. Yeah, we
Yeah,
stuck with it. So
yeah, it's I'm glad because it does really like resonate, you
yeah.
know? It's just one of those things. Okay, so let's get into it. So I just kind of want to kick things off with a moment that just kind of really captures the intensity of your journey. What's one dramatic or pivotal moment in your life that just kind of like sticks with you to this day? Something that just really made you just stop in your tracks.
Something pivotal that kind of brought me to this point, but I've had so many moments that have brought me to the next level, to the next level, to the next level that there isn't one. But if I had to go back and think of probably the worst and best moment is, so I got to go back a little bit to my younger years in my 20s and 30s. So I was working for a linen company delivering linen towels, uniforms, things like that. So
Mhm.
in fact, even going further back, I had 23 jobs from the age of 16 to 20. I had 23 different jobs. I never held a job longer than 2 weeks. And I didn't know why. I thought it was just because I was lazy or, I don't know. I figured out very quickly it was because more so I was unemployable. It's that I had big ideas, I had, dreams, and I couldn't be under the thumb of somebody. And so it took me a little while to figure that out. But that's really why. In fact, I held a job for 8 hours one time. There's a funny story, but I didn't tell my mom for 2 weeks. So she thought I was going to work. I was going to a friend's house. So we'll get back to the pivotal moment part. But so I went through all of that. And then I went back to this linen company actually 3 different times. I quit there twice with no notice. They kept hiring me back. I guess I was either that good or they just needed people. But I remember the last time I went back there in my mid 20s, I stayed for 12 years. And that was the longest stint I ever had for a job, is because I was having a baby. And so I said, well, I need the insurance. I'm going to go work there. And then I'm going to quit as soon as they pay for the labor and delivery and all of that,
Mhm.
so that I have some insurance, and then I'm going to go follow my dreams again. And so I went there and I just stayed. And there were some pivotal moments in that. One was when I was there, I'm going to get the timelines messed up, but while I was there, I was also dabbling in side projects. I always had 3 jobs until this one really consumed most of my life. But I was trying to become a police officer at one point, and I got through a lot of that. But that's then when the state canceled all the academies.
Mm.
So actually there was about 2,000 of us. I dwindled down to 7 of us. And I remember going and take the polygraph test. And that's when they just said, we're done. Everything's been canceled. In fact, I found out later they fired everyone who was on their probationary period as well.
Wow.
After that, because the state had no money. And so that was a big hit. And so I still have to stay at this job. And it was miserable. The job was extremely mentally taxing, physically taxing. I mean, you're carrying 100 pounds on your shoulder all day long, running up and down stairs. You're going from stop to stop to stop, 30, 40 stops a day. You're doing 14 hours, at least 14 hours a day of work. And so, at that point in time. And so I did that. I tried to become a police officer. I tried a lot of other things during that time, but the only thing that stayed constant was this job, this linen delivery. And so I stuck with it. And so this kind of pivotal moment, number one, was I'd work Monday through Friday there. And then on Saturday, I would actually do tattoos and permanent makeup at my dad's place.
Wow.
That's what he was doing. And so I would kind of apprentice under him. And so I'd work there every Saturday. And, during that time as well, so I'd work there. I'd work at my other job, 60 hours in those 5 days, and then pull another 8 hours at the shop, learning how to do those things. And then during that time, then I also took the quicker 9-week course. I became a real estate agent. I got on with a broker, and then that's when the housing market in Arizona crashed. And so literally the day that I got on with my broker, I had to make the decision, do I continue down this road, or do I again go back to this linen and keep doing that job? And I'd never quit that job at that point. It's that I was just doing both. And I was like, well, I have to keep it. It's the only secure thing in my life. So leading up, I had quit that job during that time, and I went to Utah. A buddy of mine was doing real estate coaching. So I said, hey, I'm going to do that. I went up there. I started doing real estate coaching for people up there. And that ended up, the company ended up getting shut down. Again, they found out they were doing shady things, not in my department, but they ended up getting completely shut down. And so I'm standing here in Utah, sleeping on a buddy's couch.
Wow.
And I've got my family at home. I'm just trying to do everything I can hand because it was more that mentality of it was very hard for me to stay employed. And so I just the thing that I wanted was entrepreneurship. It was, I want to own my own thing. I want every decision that I make to mean something. And I don't just want the mundane. And that again was not something I had figured out at that time. So failure again came back and kept working that job. They hired me back again. And I just finished. So we would work from about 4 a.m. to about 5 or 6 in the afternoon every day.
Wow.
And that led to one of my clients on Saturday that came in. She was actually a member of Toastmasters. And I'd never heard of Toastmasters. I had no idea what it was. And you have to know that at this time, I'm trying to do all of these things. But what I later found out is that it was actually me that was the problem. And that's why all of the things that I was trying, I was failing at. And it was mostly because of the things that I internalized wasn't becoming part of my environment. She invited me and I went to Toastmasters and ended up being one of the biggest Toastmasters in Arizona. It was Dobson Ranch at the time.
Wow.
And so we got in there, immediately loved it. I loved what it was. It was absolutely terrifying because you had at that point to stand up in front of people and speak.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where I was at with my job, I was doing the same thing. I was running this route over and over and over and seeing the same people, but I couldn't look anyone in the eye. I was that scared, I guess, of people in general that even when I would have them sign their invoices, I would be looking away. I don't know why. I couldn't talk to people. After I went to Toastmasters and I just forced myself to keep going every week, it was like all of this opened up that was inside of me. And a lot of it too came from when there's another pivotal moment if you want another one. So when I was 16, I was getting straight Fs in school. I didn't care. It's not something I wanted to learn, so I didn't care and I didn't learn it. I didn't do anything. And so my mom bought me a book and it was called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. And I'll never forget what I said, which at the time was hurtful, but now it was actually probably the best thing she could have said. And she handed me the book and she said, here, I want you to read this. And I just said, well, that's not me. And she said, yeah, I know. And then she walked out and I was like, what? I was like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be my mom. Well, she was being my mom. Yeah. She was like, I don't know how else to help you. Here, read this book. That was the first book I read, actually. And I read the whole thing, I think in like 2 nights. And a lot of those concepts really stuck with me. I ended up reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And then I just started getting book after book after book after book. And I just started absorbing all of this. The problem is that it all just stayed inside my head. And the fear of just even talking to people was insane to me. I put everyone on a pedestal above me. And so I graduated high school. I can say it here, I guess, is that only because my mentor changed my grades, actually. So I can consider not even a high school graduate. Wow. So that was another pivotal moment, kind of before all of that. So we'll fast forward, we'll go to the Toastmasters piece. And I think that really was the catalyst that released everything else. All of this stuff that was there was able to come out. And so within just a couple of weeks of being there, I was winning. Like they have awards called like best table topics, best speech, there's a lot of ribbons and medals. And I really only went there for about 4 months total. And in that 4 months, I couldn't go anymore because I got promoted 3 times in 4 months. At my job because of Toastmasters. It was like an overnight change. And so going there, it completely unlocked all of this confidence to speak to people, to look people in the eye, if you've never had that fear, it's hard to understand. And I'm still sometimes find myself there where I have to push myself. If I walk into a room, I have to introduce myself to everyone immediately because if I don't, that all comes back. And then I just end up sitting in the corner. So I'm really like antisocial, but very social when I need to be. So that's just what I've learned and that's what works for me. But I got promoted 3 times, although the schedule didn't work out. I couldn't go back anymore, but it served its purpose at that point. So then getting promoted, but then that took me away from my family. So then at that point, I was running routes. I was working 14 to 16 hours a day. I was in Yuma, Prescott. I mean, if you're not from Arizona, you don't know, but I mean, these places are 3, 4, 5 hours from each other. I was gone from my family for 4 days out of the week, staying in different places. We were understaffed. So a lot of times I had to run routes, even though I was managing about 6,000 different accounts. But I moved up through sales management, account management, logistics management, fleet management, all of these things. And it was miserable and I hated every minute of it, but it was just momentum. I just kept going and going and going. And I knew that at some point this was going to make sense to me. So going through all of that leads me to literally the pivotal moment that I've never felt in my life. And that was, I had already worked about a 14-hour day that day. And I was at my kid's soccer game. He's about 5 years old at the time. And so I'm watching him, he's kicking the ball around and cheering for him and all this. And my work phone rang. So at the time you have to carry 2 phones because you're literally working 24 hours a day. If that phone rings, there's a problem with could be a GE, could be a dealership, could be whoever. Well, this was my manager calling saying, hey, your employee didn't service one of the largest accounts that we have in Arizona. It takes about 4 hours to service that account and deliver to all the departments. You're going up two flights of stairs, carrying 80 pounds of clothes on your back, bringing down all the dirty clothes, and you're just doing that's 4 hours of just doing that all throughout the whole plant. And so he said, hey, he didn't go, but there's no option. You can't deliver tomorrow. That's just not an option because they have to have clothes tomorrow to work in, or else these 1,000 employees can't work without their uniforms. So I literally had to go and say, hey, I got to go. Tell my son, hey, I got to go. And this wasn't the first game. This was like one of the only games I was able to watch, and my phone rang. And so I left. I drove an hour to the plant, and then I had to actually load the truck with, these thousands of garments and towels and all of these other things. And it's getting dark at this point, and I have to be at work again at 4:00 in the morning. So I have to go back to that place at 4:00 in the morning, yet I have to go and deliver to this place. So I'll make this part short, but I remember as loading all of this stuff, and I felt so stuck. I felt, just imprisoned, that I can't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. I can't do anything else. This is all I know. Everything else I've done, I have failed at. And I just remember, I'm going to tear up from it actually. So I've never actually told anybody the story. So I remember just my body starting to ache. I've never felt this way before, ever. But I felt like I can't spend time with my family. This is the most money I've ever made. And to look back, it's kind of comical to think that now, but it's the most money I'd ever made. All those jobs that I had quit and gotten new jobs for, I had always made a little bit more. And that's why I'd leave the last job to make another 50 cents an hour. I'd leave the next job to make another $1 an hour. And so I was always like trying to just make an extra little bit. Well, this is the most money I'd made. And I felt totally imprisoned because if I left, I couldn't provide for my family and I had nowhere else to go. I had been promoted pretty much to the top of where I could be at that time. You have to wait for, the next guy to die or retire to get to the next level in that case, or transfer to another state. And all this stuff is going through my head. And I'm just like, I'm stuck. I've never been stuck before. I could always quit. I could always go do something else. I could always go to Utah and do that thing or this thing. I could go and, help a buddy or do construction. I've done everything. But I was like, but nothing will pay me this. And I'm just stuck. So my body was aching. I'm loading all of these garments. They're not light. And it felt like I was going to literally explode. And I've never felt that before. It's like veins were popping and my knees were getting weak and there's no one else there. So we had like 400 employees that worked at this plant. And I was the only person there because I had a key to the gate. No one else was there. So I'm the one that's taking on this burden because someone didn't do their job. I have to go out and I have to take care of it. And it wasn't the first time that it's happened. But not only that, I had to leave my kid's game to do it. And I was only halfway loading and I had already been there for an hour. And I still had to drive 30 minutes to the place. I knew this in my head and it was going to take me at least 4 hours to service the account. And then I had to drive back and unload the truck. So I knew I'm not going to get done till midnight easily. And then I have to be right back here in 4 hours. And so I remember walking out of the truck, and where the plant is at is the freeway's right there. And so I remember just going out to the fence line on the freeway and just sitting on the ground in the dirt. And I just cried. And I had never cried really before, not like that. My grandpa died. I cried for that. Sometimes in movies now, when they say I'm proud of you, Dad, that brings me to tears. But this was different. And it was like everything was releasing. And I was like, I don't know what else to do. And I've never been in this situation before. That right there, I think, is probably the most pivotal moment because that's when I made the decision. I'm like, I don't have a choice. If I stay doing this, and I've gotten to this point right now where my brain was too big for my head. It felt like my eyes were going to explode. Such a weird feeling. And I thought, I never want to feel like this again. I never want to feel stuck. I've got to do something about this. And so that's really the moment and I did it. I went out and I did the job. I was back at 4:00 in the morning. And that next day I had handed in my 2-week notice. And I didn't even tell my wife, she found out that I was quitting, and that was our insurance. That was our everything at the time. And so I said, yeah, I'm quitting. I'm going to actually the only other option I had was to do the tattoos and the permanent makeup. And it wasn't really bringing in any money. I didn't have a clientele built up at the time. I didn't even know where it was going to go. It was just kind of a backup plan at that point. And so I handed him notice and I quit. And that's what started the trajectory of learning how to run the business, what I was doing with my craft and my skill. And then I just dove into entrepreneurship and I started listening to every podcast. We're actually new at the time that this all happened. So I was listening to podcasts. I was listening to DVDs that I had these old Tony Robbins DVDs.
Oh man.
I would drive to Page And I would just take that disc out, put the new one. I'd be listening to all these Tony Robbins DVDs the whole time. It's all I consumed all the time. And so that helped a ton. I didn't know why at the time, but again, it was like I've had these moments where like all of the stuff and the prep work that I did and I didn't know why I was doing it led to, oh, that's why. And then it just is this flood of, okay, I'm able to do all of these things because I'm able to look someone in the eye and talk to them. How crazy is that? Because of Toastmasters. But it was always there. It's just that all of these events brought it out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just failure after failure after failure. And now I'm at a point where I don't look at anything as a failure anymore. I think at this point, they're necessary. Failure and success aren't two sides of a coin at all. It's literally the exact same path, that if you can get through those, they're just lessons.
Mm-hmm.
You can look back at things that I thought were earth-shattering problems, and I look at them now and I'm just like, that's easy. Like, that's nothing now. Especially the problems that I'm facing now in comparison, but I thought those were just as bad as the things that I'm facing now. But looking back, that's taught me a huge lesson of, oh, that's just one more lesson. And that molds you into somebody that you can now, be worthy or deserving to have another challenge. And until you get through that failure and that challenge, now you're worthy of taking on the next one and the next. And I think that's kind of maybe a philosophy of life, is just those aren't there to be against you. They're there for you. They're there for you to learn. And until you learn them, they're going to keep kicking you in the teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you finally get it, you finally learn that lesson, you're like, okay, now that door is going to open for you. Now you can walk through there to get to your next teeth kicking session. But it becomes to a point where if you learn that that's necessary, it's not like getting kicked in the teeth anymore. It's not like you feel like a failure in your eye, anyone else's eyes. You look at it like a lesson, and you look at it as, well, I have a quote that I got from, there's a show, it's called Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I don't know. It's hilarious. I love it. You can just watch it, and you don't have to pay much attention, but they're funny. And it was this tiny little clip of this cameo person that was only in one episode. And I don't think they meant it to be groundbreaking, but he had gotten rejected from one of the girls on the show, and he would just shrugged it off. And he said, I'm excited to see what life throws at me next, or I'm excited to see what life brings next for me. And then he walked away, and that was it. And I had to pause the show because I was like, I need to write that down. That's crazy that he took that.
Yeah.
And he was in the show, he's supposed to be this high and mighty guy, and he got rejected. And that was his response to it, was, I'm excited to see what adventure life has for me next. And I'm like, that is it right there.
Yeah.
And so I say that almost every day, and in some sense that, okay, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens next. I'm doing everything I can. I'm learning everything I can. I'm going through these lessons as good as I can. And so we're just going to see what do you got for me next, life? What other doors do you have for me? I'll open them. It's fine. As long as I'm breathing, as long as I'm taking care of my family, I'm going to keep going. And kind of that's what's led from there to here at this point. So
how long ago was that when at the linen company, where you're sitting outside, you're letting it go?
7 years ago.
Wow.
7, maybe 8 years ago.
Okay.
Let me get my timelines off because I was doing so many things. They all kind of intertwine with each other. But that was because that was my last